want to end this packed program today to talk about the designer's role in all of this, the designer's role in the transformation of the fashion industry. And you three, you all have your various perspectives. Actually, Alice, I wanted to start with you because you are heading up the recruitment of some of the leading kind of creatives and designers in Europe. And I know you can't talk about which brands you work with, but I understand it's some of the major brands. Can you give a little bit of insight of how this has changed the past few years? How the recruitment of creatives have changed? What do designers or creatives today, what are they looking for when they come to a fashion company?
So I think because of this industry that is always looking forward at the future, the companies are really looking for creative directors who are going to bring some kind of change and newness. So it can be in terms of creative vision, but it can be in terms of values, and it can be in terms of communication as well, and the kind of community they will speak to. So today what's interesting is that when we look at recruiting a creative director for a house, we look also beyond just a creative skill set. It's really going to be about what kind of community they're really going to bring to the brand and what kind of change. Mm.
And in terms of bringing sort of issues of sustainability, social justice, these kind of new values that we see increasingly more important in new generations, how has that shifted, do you think, in the recruitment?
So I think it's really interesting because we talked a lot about sustainability today, obviously, and about greenwashing. And I think the issue is that a lot of companies are interested in getting those creative directors that have those values, but then sometimes there is a disconnect between the reality. So they want to be able to communicate about having a very sustainable creative director, but then when it's about to actually make some changes in-house, this is where there is some resistance, so it can be really tricky. And I think the individuals and the key players in fashion as people are actually more driven to make a change than the companies themselves are. So it's a bit tricky always to be able to adjust. So in recruitments, what happens is that candidates now really want to go for a company that's serious about sustainability, but also about other ethical values and inclusivity. And then sometimes they're facing, when they join the house, a very different environment than what they have anticipated before. Mm-hmm.
Tuomas, you're the only designer up here on the panel, so I want to get your perspective. When launching your own brand, I'm sure with your talent you had many opportunities to work for the industry, but you've decided to go with your own brand. What was the sort of the aspects you wanted to bring out into the world with Aalto?
Well, first, of course, I wanted to do something from my own identity. So, as like one of the first Finnish persons out there working as a designer, so really bring that culture and bring that identity, that unique thing we have here to the rest of the world. And then that of course relates to the values behind. So then of course what does it really mean to do fashion? So there's also this engagement to sustainability.
Well, you work in international stage, but you have your roots here in the Nordics, of course. What do you bring from your roots in the Nordics to your work on the international fashion stage?
Well, I really consider that as the biggest asset I have, just having, being years and years working outside in big companies like Vuitton and LVMH Group, but then at the same time nurturing my own identity, understanding who I am as a Finnish person, and then cultivating that and using that as a strength to really bring something else that nobody else can bring. Mm.
We're going to continue talking about sort of being values-driven when you get out there into the world. Robin, through Swedish Fashion Council, you've done a lot of work in kind of helping and fostering talents to the global stage. First of all, maybe you can set up the talent program that you have and what you do with the designers.
Yes, we're hosting an incubator program where we currently are representing 10 emerging brands from Sweden, and we're working quite hands-on with all of the brands that we are working with. So we're taking a 360 approach when we're mentoring and coaching the designers. So we're taking care of everything from business model, business strategy, sourcing and production, sales, investments, e-commerce, PR and communication. So we have a quite big overview. And yeah, our aim is to create high-end sustainable fashion brands from Sweden.
And many, if not most or all of the brands have a very unique take on sustainability in different ways. Can you talk about how you choose the designers, and is this a big part of the selection?
Yeah, like for us it's very important to work with designers who has a disruptive vision to the industry, but also want to change the industry in some ways. And we see sustainability as quite big because it's like obviously like the environmental part, but also the social part as well. So how you can make an impact of your vision and your creativity and want to change the industry in some ways is leading things we're looking for when we are recruiting a new designer.
Well, it seems like this resonates. Many of the designers are really making a mark on the international stage. Maybe you can mention some examples so people know who you're working with.
Yeah, like luckily we can host a showroom in Paris every season where we do the wholesale for all of the designers and the brands. We also meet with the industry profiles. So like a really good example of a amazing collaboration we did was Ray Review and Hotakova, who did a collaboration with Gucci. So they upcycle old Gucci fabrics and sold it through their platform. So that is like one initiative we did, but we're collaborating with a lot of different other institutions. Fashionist, who is a London-based incubator, Dazed and Confused, and Dove Street Market as well.
And what is the reaction from, let's say, let's call it the international community, the big brands, the big magazines and so forth? Are they very welcoming to this perspective that you bring to it?
Yes, I feel like from all of our feedback we have got, everyone sees this as a very fresh new wave, and for us it's also been to build back growth to Sweden and actually make Sweden a very attractive place for fashion. And from our work the past 3 years, we can see a lot of good feedback and people like what we're doing.
Alice, maybe you can bring a perspective on this. Do you have a sense of how the kind of the Nordics, what are they bringing to the international fashion stage in terms of either values or design sensibilities or anything in their background?
I think a vision we have, especially I would say in France and in Italy, is we really perceive the Nordics as the leader in terms of sustainability and sustainable fashion. So that for us is something quite integrated, but also in terms of, I think, concept, practicality, and all of that. I think what they bring is just what, again, you were talking about making talents be seen globally, and we were talking about it this morning, just the two of us. I think it's so important because there is talent everywhere in the world. There are so many countries where we're not really looking at the designers out there, but it's so interesting when we can get as many people joining that conversation as we can. You know, in India, there are a lot of amazing designers as well. In Tbilisi, in Lagos, there are a lot of interesting fashion weeks happening. So I feel it's kind of the same here also. I've been seeing so many interesting Finnish designers in the past few years, and I wanted to get closer to the action. So that's why I'm here.
Has the brief from, I mean, your clients are the fashion houses that are recruiting talent, so to speak. Has the brief changed at all with regards to sustainability or the past few years, or maybe it's something you wish to see more of?
So sadly, the brief is not really changing. Again, I feel that the brief is that they want to address, all the clients when they do these kind of recruitments want to address Gen Z and Gen Y. So in a way, it's part of the brief because as we saw in numbers, Gen Z, Gen Y are much more interested today in ethical brands or brands carrying their values. So because of that, if they want to be able to attract these talents, they will have to change to a certain extent. So we can see even on any kind of recruitments, a sort of creative recruitments, that today new generations want to be able to work remotely a little bit. They want to be in a company that carries the same values and that has a purpose. And because of that, if the companies are not changing, then they cannot access a broad pool of candidates.
So is there a disconnect? What do you think needs to happen? Is there some developments that you see in the industry that you are hoping to happen?
So honestly, everything we talked about today is very exciting for me, especially, like fighting greenwashing, because I think it can get very frustrating in position where as, executive search consultants, so what we call headhunters, we're very much behind the curtain. We get to see a lot of the things happening, within the companies. And it can get frustrating when you actually see the marketing and the greenwashing, and then you know that on the inside it's not really like this. So I do hope that there's going to be more regulations so companies are really forced to take these things seriously. And I think the talents, the creative talents especially, are just really looking forward to it as well. I mean, they're definitely on board with this idea, and they just want the companies to help them go there.
We've talked a lot today about the need for new collaborations, kind of new alliances, and working across industries. Tuomas, as a designer and an entrepreneur, what are some of the things you are looking for or needed? What kind of support would you need for bringing your vision to the world?
Well, open spirit, of course, like we, I guess, understand. It's tough industry. There's a lot of blah, 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 but then not so much happening in the background. I used to think that there used to be like a lot of corporate, changing like little things, trying to push it corporate way to the more sustainable things. And I was always thinking, okay, but really like me as a designer and art director should really engage to that, because in the end, if the CEO decides to do something, but the art director doesn't, the product won't change. But then nowadays, I think it's kind of flipped around in some sense that, there's a lot of greenwashing, so we can also question what does it really mean anymore, like recycled and stuff like that. So what I'm really looking about is like open spirit and trying to really change it radically, like make different type of product, maybe project and processes aside, because I think the big problem is that nobody has the guts to change their full process today, because the business is tough, it's a lot work, and there's a lot of risk. So kind of diversifying maybe that and starting to do smaller projects and looking at small scale things where you can actually do something much more pure, what actually I'm doing also with Recoded at Aalto. I think industry needs to wake up, have a real wake-up call on this.
Industry needs to wake up. Yeah, Alice, did you want to?
No, I think there is a lot to go. I don't want to defend those companies, definitely not. I think there's a lot to do with agility. When you're a smaller brand, it's easier to be able to adjust to new practices, obviously. So I often compare it to a boat. You're a small boat, so if you want to turn, it's quite easy. But when you're a huge house employing thousands of people, if you have to completely change your production, your processes to become more sustainable, it's like trying to, move around a big cruise ship. So it takes, days to be able to just change direction. So I think a lot of those companies are really scared because it would mean complete change that could impact all of the business. And that's why we're seeing more and more capsules instead of actual change. When you think about it, even, the Zara, the H&M, etc., they are doing, a little bit of like conscious, for whatever that means, capsule, but they're scared to change the core of who they are and how they operate. So.
Robin, I want your take on this sort of need for collaboration. I mean, aside from the talent program, you do a lot of work on really transforming the industry, what we're talking about here today. Can you name some key things you see need to happen in the industry to change? I mean, pick one or two that maybe adds to the conversation here today.
No, I think obviously, like in the world we're living in today, I think we need to focus in how we can scale on sustainability and how we can actually make the clothes also stay longer on the market. And I think we have so good conversations here today about crossover industry collaboration, because I think that will be the key. One other important thing for us to focus is to have more representation in the industry as well and have a bigger diversity. So that would be the crucial part for our agenda.
Wonderful. Is there anything more coming out of the Fashion Council? I know you're releasing, you had your report released last year. Anything on the horizon that we should keep on the lookout for Fashion Council? You also had a conference of your own recently in Milan.
Yeah, we had a conference between the forest and the fashion industry in Milan 2 weeks ago. We will launch our new report, Fashion Transformation, now in June during Almedalen, who is the political week in Sweden. And then we're having some big things coming up very soon in the fall. So that's very exciting.
Wonderful. Let's keep an eye out for that. Tuomas, Alice, and Robin, thank you so much for convening this panel. And that concludes. Let us have a round of applause.
Thank you.